Punishments, isolation, deprivation. Some of the many disturbing practices that are said to have taken place in the mysterious backrooms of the sinister Sega headquarters of the 90s. While most of us associate the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog with joyous, childish glee, others have come to associate the Sega brand with abject mistreatment and memories of psychological trauma. If everything we are discussing today is to be true, Sega of Japan during the console wars for some was an absolutely dreadful place to work, where inducing the extreme suffering of certain employees was an everyday common occurrence. So bearing this in mind, hit that subscribe button and join me as we delve into the dark side of Sega and their depraved backroom conduct. In the vast expanse of the Western corporate landscape, encountering companies with questionable treatment of their employees is not uncommon. Yet amidst the myriad of problematic practices over in the land of the rising sun, one finds an exceptional case exemplified by Sega of Japan. Here the boundaries of corporate misconduct were pushed to egregious extents as the company actively orchestrated strategies to subject unwanted staff to profound suffering, all in the pursuit of punishment or expulsion. Various reports suggest that deep within the confines of Sega's main premises, rooms existed that were utilised for the primary purpose of making out-of-favour employees as miserable at work as possible. Some would go as far as to say those who suffered the undesirable fate of being placed in one of these torturous rooms would be faced with a war of attrition, which would challenge their mental health and well-being, fortitude and even their sanity. No one wanted to face the cruel fate of being placed in one of these harsh rooms, which raises the question, why would a money-making company include such vindictive practices, and what was it even about this part of the building that harboured such misery and despair? Well, to understand how this workplace became such a sick and twisted place to be, we first need to look to the past and understand how Sega of Japan became the breeding ground for such punitive measures and toxic corporate culture. While sadly to this day many people still find themselves unhappy in workplaces across the world, at least many can find a degree of solace in the escapist world of gaming. Still, the problem lies in the fact that games are getting more and more expensive, but alongside today's sponsor Instant Gaming, I'd like to step up and help you get much cheaper deals. Instant Gaming distinguishes itself by offering the opportunity to procure video games at insanely low prices. After all, if you are getting a digital copy of a game, shouldn't it be much cheaper than physical, as there are no manufacturing costs? Well, we think so. Instant Gaming gets all of its keys directly from the source, offering us authenticity without compromise. Honestly, the deals on their website are insane, with big discounts off most games you can think of, with some being up to 90% off. I'm really not exaggerating, and I use this service all the time myself, but if you want to go one step further than that and get a game for free, visit my link, which I've posted in both the description and the pinned comment. Make your Instant Gaming account and then select participate to enter the giveaway. You can follow Instant Gaming on their socials and join their Discord to increase your chances of winning. As soon as the countdown ends, the lucky winner will be notified by email. Help yourself through these tough economic times by checking out the thousands of games Instant Gaming have for cheap by using the direct links I've posted in the description below. Happy shopping. To unravel this somewhat dystopian tale, one must delve into the socio-economic climate that enveloped Sega of Japan during the 1990s. However, to truly grasp this essence, one must turn their attention to the individual at the helm, Hayao Nakayama. Although hailed as a genius, this leader also had a dark side which made him a formidable leader. Hayao Nakayama, a figure shrouded in the shadows of corporate power, wielded influence with a steely resolve that bordered on ruthlessness. His calculated demeanour and unyielding pursuit of success painted a portrait of a man whose ambitions knew no bounds, even at the expense of others. With a penchant for decisive action and a reputation for bending the rules to suit his agenda, Nakayama commanded respect tinged with fear, casting a sinister aura over his reign at Sega. But, like any good villain in a tale, he has an interesting origin story. Hayao Nakayama emerged into a world steeped in the remnants of the Japanese Empire, a time devoid of significant Western influence. Raised amidst luxury and privilege, Nakayama's family boasted a lineage of medical professionals, each harbouring expectations for him to follow suit. This is no rags to riches underdog story. Nakayama was literally born and bred for success. Yet, despite all of this, Hayao was not the sort of person who liked to be told what to do. Regardless of his parents' hopes and dreams for him to become a top medical professional, he refused to walk the path laid out for him. In a stunning departure from convention, he seized an opportunity after spotting a job in a newspaper, embarking on a career leasing jukeboxes, of all things. An unconventional choice given his background, but one that would eventually shape his trajectory for the rest of his life. Fueled by an insatiable thirst for success and a rebellious spirit, Nakayama blazed the trail within the V&V trading company with unwavering determination. Rising through the ranks, his tenacity propelled him to the top of his own sales division, marking the beginning of his ascent in the corporate world. But jukeboxes were only enough for Nakayama for so long. Within his role, Nakayama's sharp intuition and forward-thinking mindset led him to recognise the untapped potential of the arcade industry. So he suggested to his higher-ups the company should pivot to this realm. The older Japanese businessmen in charge would swiftly reject his proposal, rebuffing his vision and ordering him to adhere to the status quo. But Nakayama's rebellious spirit remained undimmed as he forged ahead in pursuit of his goals, regardless of what anyone else thought about them, establishing his own arcade company and taking the best and brightest of his colleagues with him. His company, Esco Trading, would perform so well that by 1979 they were acquired by Sega, with Nakayama ascending to the role of the president of Sega by 1983. It was because of Nakayama that Sega would enter the console wars, further propelling Sega to the forefront of the gaming industry. Yet, lurking beneath his visionary facade lay a shadowy ambition that brooked no dissent, as Nakayama ruthlessly maneuvered to consolidate power and shape the gaming landscape to his own design, and conquer the United States of America, a dream that was achieved with this.
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does.
16-bit sports action.
Genesis does what Nintendo don't, the famous marketing slogan for Sega's 16-bit system under the leadership of Tom Kalinske of Sega of America. But before any of this came to fruition, an intriguing dynamic had emerged. The board of directors at Sega of Japan contested Kalinske's marketing strategies, including opposing the bundling of the console with Sonic the Hedgehog and the aggressive and tubular advertising campaign. In this moment, one can't help but speculate that Hayao Nakayama drew upon his own experiences when facing such dismissive boards. Nakayama boldly intervened, his decisive action overriding the board's objections, ultimately paved the way for the success of the Genesis. But it's not so much the success of the Genesis that's crucial in this tale, but more how Nakayama would utilise this situation to make the Japanese Sega staff's life hell. Within the confines of Sega's Japanese headquarters, a sense of envy permeated among employees. During the 16-bit console's triumphs abroad under Kalinske's guidance, it struggled to replicate the same level of success in its homeland. Historical accounts suggest that Nakayama frequently admonished Sega of Japan staff and board for their perceived shortcomings in comparison to their US counterparts. Such criticisms undoubtedly presented a formidable challenge for employees to endure, particularly within the context of Japan's rigid working culture. Indeed, Japan is renowned for its notoriously long working hours, ranking among the highest in the world. The prevailing culture dictates that working extended hours is not merely a choice, but a way of life ingrained in the societal fabric. Even in contemporary times, the prevalence of overtime remains staggering, with over a quarter of Japanese companies requiring employees to work more than 80 hours of overtime per month. frequently without compensation. One of the defining characteristics that sets Japan apart from many other developed nations is its unique corporate culture shaped by the archetype known as the salaryman. These individuals are characterized by their unwavering loyalty to the companies they serve, often committing their entire professional lives to a single organization. This steadfast dedication forms the bedrock of Japan's corporate landscape, illustrating the deeply ingrained values of loyalty, commitment, and stability that underpin its business ethos. The Japanese work ethic propelled the nation to achieve the status of the world's second largest economy, a feat partly attributed to its cultural emphasis on collective success over the individual achievements. Within this ethos, companies prioritize the cohesion and prosperity of the organization as a whole above the aspirations of any single individual. If you think this sounds like an ant colony, it's because it does. The relentless pressure of Japan's demanding work culture, coupled with the stark comparisons to their American counterparts, undoubtedly took a toll on the mental health of many Japanese workers. The constant striving for excellence amidst long hours and intense expectations likely contributed to stress, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. Facing constant scrutiny and being told they fell short in comparison to the Americans likely exacerbated feelings of inadequacy and frustration. Within a struggling Sega of Japan throughout the 90s and into the 2000s, a culture of maintaining staff discipline to increase productivity was prevalent, and Nakayama seemed to favour a coercive approach rather than one of incentives, which is really quite sinister when you consider that he himself was a natural-born rebel who hated being forced into pigeonholes. Yet was more than happy to do this to other people, including breeding the culture which would feature the use of the dreaded backrooms, which would be utilised with horrifying frequency in the next chapter of Sega history. By 1995, it became increasingly apparent that the Sega Mega Drive in Japan had fallen short of the company's lofty expectations. Consequently, all eyes turned to the new Sega Saturn, representing the corporation's renewed aspirations for success in the gaming industry. During this period of upheaval, Sega of Japan faced the daunting task of completely restructuring their company. Remarkably, not a single member of staff was laid off during this process, but as gracious as this move seemed on the surface, the failure to lay anyone off was not necessarily beneficial to the employees of Sega and would lead to some of the darkest decision-making in the company yet. You see, Sega was now in a situation whereby they had a building full of staff members that they neither wanted nor needed, so they would begin encouraging loose-end employees to resign voluntarily or transition to positions within affiliate companies. However, for those who resisted this course of action, the situation took a sinister turn. In a best-case scenario for those who went against the grain, Sega implemented a policy requiring them to remain at home throughout the day, with a 30% reduction in their wages. However, for many, the scenario took a more severe turn as they were confined to the dreaded backrooms. Once they had met this terrible fate, they would find themselves in completely empty offices with no assigned tasks or work to occupy their time. An absolute living nightmare, particularly for many of the creatives who worked for the company. Creatives often despise boredom because it feels like wasted potential. Their minds are wired to seek inspiration, novelty, and challenges constantly. Additionally, many creatives thrive on stimulation and excitement, finding inspiration in the unexpected and the unknown. Boredom can feel like the antithesis of this, leading to frustration and restlessness. Putting employees in these rooms could significantly impact the hangers-on's mental health, contributing to feelings of anxiety and low self-esteem. Prolonged time spent in these rooms could easily contribute to depression, confusion, and existential angst. Once here with no assigned tasks or work to occupy their time, the intention behind such mistreatment was to compel these employees to relinquish their positions, diverting from the cultural norm of steadfast loyalty to the company and instead prompting them to move forward with their lives. Sega employees who refused to comply with the company's directives often found themselves relegated to these isolated rooms, hoping to break their spirits. An article published in The Times in August of 1999 recounts the experience of an employee named Toshiyuki Sakai, who sheds light on the harrowing reality of being subjected to this practice. Assigned to a desk in a windowless room at Sega's headquarters, devoid of an outside telephone line and bereft of any assigned tasks, Toshiyuki Sakai recounts a sense of foreboding, realising that his tenure with Sega Enterprises, the renowned video game maker, was swiftly drawing to a close. As outlined by The Times, employees were dispatched to a room officially designated as the Persona Room, but were colloquially referred to as the company jail, which was utilised when Sega deemed them surplus to requirements and wished for them to resign. Toshiyuki Sakai, a 35-year-old quality controller, attested to this practice. For most individuals, a mere week or two of idling in this room was sufficient to compel them to accept voluntary retirement. However, Mr. Sakai endured a grueling 3-month period of what he terms solitary confinement. Despite resisting leaving, Sega ultimately terminated his employment, citing insufficient work ability. In 1999, it was revealed that the majority of large Japanese corporations avoid laying off employees, as it contradicted the nation's revered jobs for life system. This system, which rewarded loyalty with job security, was considered sacrosanct within Japanese culture. During this alarming trend of isolation, which bordered on harassment, unwanted employees found themselves stripped of their jobs, desks, and dignity. Japanese unions in the early stages of this process often acquiesced to such abuse, further exacerbating the plight of these individuals. In 1999, a Sega spokesperson named Munehiro Umemura spoke out in defense of isolating staff in the so-called Persona Rooms, asserting, "Most of them had already decided to leave anyway. The media has reported the rooms as if they were company jails. Sega has never done anything to drive those in the rooms to leave the company." Refusing to capitulate to Sega's actions, Mr. Sakai opted to pursue legal action against the company. Bitter and rightfully aggrieved at the appalling treatment he endured after dedicating 9 years of his life to Sega, he sought justice through the legal system. Reflecting on his experience in one of the Persona Rooms, Mr. Sakai remarked, "It was really like an isolation ward. When the personnel department ordered me to spend the whole day there, I was close to tears, thinking of all I'd done for the company." At a later date, approximately 30 members of a Sega union group staged a protest outside of Sega headquarters, utilising megaphones to denounce the injustices of this practice. Furthermore, members of the group distributed flyers to Sega employees, raising awareness about the detrimental effects of such policies. In 2001, it was reported that the workers of Sega Enterprises Limited emerged victorious in their battle against the gaming company's inhumane labour practices, resulting in the cessation of solitary confinement rooms. The Japanese press reported an out-of-court agreement whereby Sega pledged to cease the use of isolation rooms. As part of the agreement, workers confined in these rooms would be transferred to other sections of the business without experiencing any degradation in their previous working conditions. The promise further entailed providing jobs to 5 workers who had been forced to stay at home for over 5 months, along with reimbursing them for the wages they had not received. Additionally, Sega declared its commitment to dismissing workers for company reasons in a manner that would not impede their future job prospects in Japan. As for Hayao Nakayama, who was with the company when the restructuring process began in 1995, he had departed from the company by 1998 and therefore was not present for the removal of the Persona Rooms, so he would face 0 consequences for allowing these brutal practices to occur under his watch. Nakayama exited Sega's doors, coinciding with a period of significant decline for both the company and the nation as a whole. Reflecting on many of the cruelties that this man would inflict during his leadership reign, what's particularly fascinating about Nakayama's ascent to the top was that he defied the conventional archetype of the Japanese salaryman, embodying a stark contrast from the norm. From the outset of his career, his divergence from and willingness to challenge the board at Sega by endorsing Tom Kalinski's plans further exemplifies his maverick spirit and willingness to defy convention in pursuit of success. Remembering all of this, one might have expected him to champion alternative methods for motivating his staff, rather than resorting to bullying tactics. However, as history reveals, this was not the case. Nonetheless, what's done is done, and Nakayama's legacy remains complex. It's a story of innovation, risk-taking, and, unfortunately, the darker aspects of corporate culture, with nothing being more evident of this than Sega's dreaded backrooms. Don't forget you can support this channel by purchasing cheap games using my instant gaming link, or if you really like what you see and want to support this channel in a more personal way, then consider backing this show on Patreon. Thank you and see you soon.